All right, ready for another deep dive?
Let's do it.
This one is a case that's, well, it's both mysterious and heartbreaking. The disappearance and murder of Bethany Decker.
Yeah.
So we're talking about this young woman. She was pregnant, already a mom,
Mm,
juggling life in Ashburn, Virginia. This was back in 2011.
right.
She vanishes, and it takes over a decade for any kind of resolution.
Yeah.
So we've got Wikipedia and an NBC4 Washington news article to kind of piece together what happened.
Okay.
What makes this case so compelling to me is that it's not just about, like, finding the killer.
Right.
It's about the years of uncertainty, the
Yeah.
false leads,
Yeah.
and the devastating impact, on Bethany's family.
Absolutely. And to think, early on, her friends and family were getting Facebook messages seemingly from Bethany after she was already gone.
Oh, wow.
It's chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah, those messages add a whole other layer of complexity to this story. It's like someone was actively trying to create the illusion that Bethany was still out there.
Right.
But before we jump into that, let's paint a picture of Bethany's life before she disappeared.
Okay, so she was 21, married to Emil Decker,
Mhm.
but also in a relationship with Ronald Roldan, so that's already a lot to unpack.
It is. And it seems these relationships weren't exactly harmonious. Her marriage was strained, and her relationship with Roldan was, by many accounts, troubled from the start.
Hold on, trouble how? So the sources mentioned that Roldan had a criminal record, right?
He did. Convictions for identity theft, public intoxication, and destruction of property.
Whoa, wait a minute. Now, I'm no expert, but those charges together, they kind of paint a pretty disturbing picture. Identity theft, that suggests a willingness to deceive and manipulate,
Yeah.
while the other charges hinted a potential for aggression and, like, a disregard for the rules.
Yeah,
Does that fit with what we know about his relationship with Bethany?
it does. Bethany's family described him as abusive, possessive, and controlling. They even said that he would demand she send him pictures throughout the day to prove who she was with. That kind of obsessive behavior is a major red flag.
It's terrifying. So we've got this young woman trying to navigate a, complicated personal life.
Yeah.
And she's involved with this guy who's exhibiting some seriously alarming behaviors,
Right.
and then she disappears.
Yep.
Tell me more about the timeline leading up to that.
Okay, so the last time anyone saw Bethany was January 29, 2011.
Okay.
She had spent the previous night with her husband at her grandparents' house. The next morning, Emil saw her before she left to go back to her apartment. Roldan claims he saw her there later that afternoon, but that's where the trail goes cold.
So both the husband and the boyfriend are, like, the last known people to see her.
Right.
That immediately puts them both under suspicion.
Right, of course. And investigators looked into both of them. Emil was actually already back in Afghanistan when Bethany disappeared. His leave had ended, but the army flew him back for questioning, and he cooperated fully, even taking a polygraph.
And Roldan, what's his alibi?
He claimed that he just assumed Bethany had gone back to live with her family.
Hmm.
But think about those previous charges. Identity theft, destruction of property. Doesn't exactly scream, reliable witness, does it?
No, it doesn't. And this is all before we even get to those Facebook messages, right?
Yeah.
Those are what really make this case stand out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine being Bethany's mother receiving messages from your daughter's account, not knowing that she's vanished.
Yeah,
The cruel twist.
it is. So walk me through that. How did these messages delay the realization that Bethany was missing?
Well, Bethany was a busy young woman, so her friends and family were used to not hearing from her for days at a time.
Right.
So when these messages popped up on Facebook, they initially didn't think anything was amiss.
So they were lulled into this, false sense of security.
Right. Some friends noticed the messages sounded different, not quite Bethany's usual style. They reached out to her mother, Kim Nelson, and that's when the panic set in. Bethany's grandparents went to her apartment, found her car parked oddly, dusty, with a flat tire. That's when they knew something was terribly wrong.
It sends chills down my spine thinking about those messages, knowing that someone was out there pretending to be Bethany while she was, well, we don't know where she was at that point.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Who was sending those messages and why?
Right.
It's a detail that really makes you wonder what was going on in those crucial early days of the investigation.
It makes you wonder if whoever was behind those messages was trying to buy themselves time to cover their tracks.
Exactly. And that brings us to the early stages of the investigation. What were the police doing? Who were they focusing on? Did they uncover any leads?
Well, let's dive into that. Did they search Roldan's place? Were they able to trace those Facebook messages?
They did search Roldan's new place. After he moved out of Bethany's apartment, they seized his cell phone, his laptop, documents. But it seems like they hit a wall. And the Facebook messages, those proved tricky to trace back then. Technology wasn't what it is today.
So the case went cold. What about Bethany's family? They must have been going through hell.
They were. Especially Bethany's mother, Kim Nelson.
Right.
She never gave up searching for answers. But for years, there was nothing.
Yeah.
Then in 2014, a shocking turn of events brings Bethany's case back into the spotlight.
Okay, hold on. After all those years of silence, something new happens.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really intense, right?
It does. In 2014, Ronald Roldan is arrested in North Carolina.
Okay.
Not for Bethany's disappearance,
Why?
but for the attempted murder of his then-girlfriend, Vicki Willoughby.
Wait, so even after Bethany vanished, he's still exhibiting this pattern of violence and control with another woman? It's like he didn't learn anything.
That's what's so chilling about this case.
Yeah.
Willoughby claimed Roldan had become increasingly controlling, just like he was with Bethany. She tried to escape by moving to North Carolina, but he tracked her down. A fight broke out, and she ended up shooting him in self-defense.
Oh, wow.
But he overpowered her,
Oh, my God.
tipping her 3 times, once in the head.
Oh, my goodness. This is horrific. It's a miracle they both survived.
It is, and you can imagine how this news must have hit Bethany's family.
Yeah,
It confirmed their worst fears about Roldan's true nature.
absolutely. So what did the investigators do? They must have seen this as a major break in Bethany's case.
They did. They went to interview Roldan in jail, hoping he'd finally crack and reveal something about Bethany. But he refused to cooperate. And then Willoughby drops a bombshell on the Dr. Phil show.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What does she say?
She claimed that during their fight, Roldan had boasted about his ability to make people disappear.
Oh, whoa. That sends shivers down my spine. Talk about incriminating.
It definitely added fuel to the fire.
Right.
The police had a suspect with a history of violence,
Mm-hmm.
a connection to a missing pregnant woman, and now this chilling statement.
So did they finally charge him with Bethany's murder?
Not right away.
Yeah,
He served time in North Carolina for the assault on Willoughby.
right.
But Bethany's mother, Kim Nelson, kept the pressure on.
Yeah.
She organized vigils, spoke to the media, never letting people forget about her daughter.
It's incredible how she never gave up, even after all those years.
She's a true force of nature.
Yeah.
And her persistence paid off. In 2020, when Roldan was released from prison in North Carolina, he was immediately extradited back to Virginia to face charges in Bethany's case.
Finally, after all this time, it seems like justice might actually be served. Did they find any new evidence?
Well, nobody was ever found,
Right.
which made building a case very challenging.
Yeah.
But prosecutors had Bethany's car, the Facebook messages, witness testimony about Roldan's controlling behavior, and the chilling parallel with the Willoughby case.
So what happened? Did they go to trial?
They were preparing for a trial, but then in 2022, Roldan offered a plea deal.
Okay.
He agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for a reduced sentence.
So he admits to killing her, but avoids a trial. That must have been a difficult decision for Bethany's family.
It was. A trial could have brought out more details, potentially leading to Bethany's remains.
Yeah.
But it would have also been a grueling and emotionally draining process.
Right.
They ultimately accepted the plea deal,
Yeah.
prioritizing a guaranteed conviction.
What did Roldan say happened to Bethany? Did he finally reveal the truth?
As part of the plea deal, he provided a detailed confession. He claimed they had an argument at her apartment, and he pushed her, causing her to fall and hit her head on a windowsill.
Hold on. He's saying it was an accident. That seems hard to believe given everything we know about him.
It does, doesn't it?
Mm.
Remember his history. Identity theft, destroying property, the attack on Willoughby.
Right.
This guy has a pattern of violence and a knack for manipulating situations to his advantage.
Exactly. And what about the Facebook messages? Did he admit to sending those?
He did.
Wow.
He confessed to accessing Bethany's account and sending those messages to mislead her family and friends, giving himself time to cover his tracks.
That's just cold-blooded, and it makes those early messages even more chilling to think about.
It's a truly disturbing detail.
Yeah.
And what he claims he did next is even more horrifying.
Right.
He said he panicked, and instead of calling for help, he put her body in a Christmas tree disposal bag and threw it into the trash compactor at their apartment complex.
A trash compactor. No wonder they never found her body. That's a detail that stays with you. So what was his sentence? 40 years. Life.
He was sentenced to 40 years in prison, which is the maximum for second-degree murder in Virginia.
Okay.
But here's the catch. All but 12.5 years were suspended.
Wait, what? So he could be out in just over a decade. That doesn't seem right.
It's a complicated issue. The judge took into account the fact that he confessed and spared Bethany's family the trauma of a trial.
I understand the reasoning, but it's still hard to swallow. He took a life, went to great lengths to cover it up,
Right.
terrorized another woman, and he might be walking free in a few years.
It's a bitter pill to swallow for sure. But there are also some legal complexities at play here. Second-degree murder means the killing wasn't premeditated.
Right.
And while his actions after the fact were clearly calculated, proving intent to kill in the initial push would have been difficult without a body and a clear understanding of what happened in that apartment.
Okay, that makes sense legally, but it still doesn't feel like justice. What about Bethany's family? Did they ever find her remains?
Sadly, no.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes this case so haunting. Even with a conviction, there's this gaping hole of unanswered questions and the profound grief of not being able to lay their daughter to rest.